Hey everyone, Joellen here, and welcome to another session of Washington Watercolor. For this watercolor lesson, I thought it would be beneficial to talk about atmospheric perspective, sometimes called aerial perspective. For me, atmospheric perspective is changing values or changing color or color temperature in order to create depth or distance within your subject or painting. I've created a basic drawing of this beautiful scene of the Eiffel Tower. Using PBO masking fluid, I've masked out the cherry blossoms in the foreground. The colors I'll be using today include Winsor Lemon, Quinacridone Gold, Winsor Orange, Red Shade, Quinacridone Magenta, Winsor Violet, Ultramarine Blue, Winsor Blue Green Shade, Sap Green, Perylene Green, and Sepia. Here are my Princeton and Rosemary brushes. I'll start off by wetting my paper with clean water. I want there to be a fair amount of water on the paper. And then I'll pick up a little bit of my Winsor Lemon and place that in the center area, followed by some Winsor Orange, a little bit of Quinacridone, and then I'll add some of my other colors in. And you can see it's forming a little bit of a bullseye. The sky mainly is going to be darker at the top part. That is the part that is closest to us. And in order to create depth and distance, I want that top and the bottom to be darker than the area near the horizon. As you may know, I love working wet into wet paint, and I'll pick up some of my magenta and I'll start to tap in areas where the cherry blossoms are. Now I want to make sure that the paint doesn't flow everywhere, so I'll continuously wipe the paint off on a paper towel and just tap in with a drier paint, and this way it will hold a nice soft shape. Pick up a little bit of my sap green and my perylene green, and I'll just tap in some areas in between the leaves where I can see a tree in the distance, and that tree is green and a little darker. Dark colors or dark values have a tendency to come forward, while lighter colors or lighter values have a tendency to push back in space. And I said this lesson was going to be about atmospheric perspective, and that is part of it. We're trying to create this depth and distance by changing values. And if you see here, I really feel the painting, you can see the foreground, the trees are really starting to pull forward compared to the sky in the back area by the Eiffel Tower. Mix together some of my purple with some green and blues, and I want to get this kind of muted purple and paint in the backland by the horizon. And once I get this put in, then I'll grab a little bit of my Winsor Orange and add it to the top just to get that beautiful glow that we're seeing right on the horizon. Using mostly perylene green, I'll darken some areas under the cherry blossom tree. I now paint in the Eiffel Tower, and I'll use a combination of colors that include my Windsor Violet, my Windsor Blue, green shade, and touches of orange. It's a lot to get through, so bear with me. I'm pretty happy with that. So now I'll bring my attention to the foreground and I'll pick up some of my blues and start to get the roads that I see that lead under the Eiffel Tower and then the pathway that is in front. And I said this was about atmospheric perspective, but we also have a little bit of linear perspective where you can see the straight lines of the path and how it narrows as it moves back in space. There are these beautiful rust-colored trees in that mid-ground, and I'll use a little bit of my Windsor Orange red shade along with some quinacridone gold to paint these in. I continue to paint on, I think about the changes in values that I'm seeing in order to create that depth and distance. We look at the sky and we can see the sky is really one of the lightest areas in our photo reference, and it should be in my painting. And then the Eiffel Tower or that midground, it is dark, but it's not as dark as some of the areas in the foreground. And I really want to make those observations in order to create the depth and distance and really get that beautiful atmosphere in my painting. My paint on the left-hand side just dried a little too light. So again, I'll mix up a purplish blue color and I'll paint that area over by the horizon, making it a little darker. Using some sepia with some purple, I'll paint in the trunks and the branches of the trees on the left. I painted over some of the trunks on the right hand side, so I'll use a flat brush to go and scrub out some of the paint. I'll then use that dark combination to paint in the trunks and some of the branches in the cherry blossom tree. Okay, so let me talk a little more about atmospheric perspective. Painting is not only about mastering the medium, in this case, watercolor, but it's also about applying basic principles such as composition, form, etc. to a painting. In this video, I talk about the basic concept of atmospheric perspective. If you're not familiar with atmospheric, sometimes called aerial perspective, it's about changing values, lights, darks, color, or temperature. A simplified landscape, for example, will have a sky and land, which are generally two horizontal planes. It may have a diagonal plane, such as mountains, or a vertical plane, like trees, in this case trees and an Eiffel Tower. In general, the horizontal planes will be the lightest and the vertical planes the darkest. However, as vertical planes move back, they become lighter. So not everything is equal. In many ways, this is a simple concept. However, there are so many variables, it can be overwhelming. Now I have to say, I went a little crazy with the pink. I love pink, but the magenta got a little out of control. I hope you liked watching my demonstration and learned a little bit about atmospheric perspective. Maybe you painted along. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.